In my time, the years I've been knocking around, I've heard a great many definitions of work. But I have my own, like a lot of other things. And my definition of work is that nothing is really work unless you'd rather be doing something else. To some people in Seattle, Washington, fishing is work. Other people think it's a heck of a lot of fun. I watch guys in the Carolinas who work in furniture factories, and they think building furniture is work. There are other people who do it in their basement. They think it is fun. Now, the point to all of this is that it all depends upon how you look at it. And when I come down here and spend time with you, believe me, it is not work. Because I can't think of anything else I'd rather do than this. So I enjoy being here with you. Now, you have done a good job and you are doing good. But I want to talk to you a little bit about the future. And I think my situation is a little bit like a guy who was dressed up to the best he had ever looked in a tuxedo, and he went in a very, very famous restaurant in New York. And he demanded the best table in the room. And the head waiter took a look at him and set him right in the best table. The fellow had about a 9-course dinner, and when he finished, he asked the head waiter to come over and talk to him. The head waiter came over and says, "What can I do for you, sir?" And he said to the head waiter, he says, "You don't remember me, do you?" And the waiter looked him over pretty good, and he says, "Sir, I don't really believe I do." And this guy says, 2 years ago, I came in here one night for dinner, and I had a scrumptious meal. When I got all through with it, I realized I didn't have the money to pay you. And you, sir, you threw me right out in the street. And the head waiter said, "Sir," he says, I'm really sorry about that. Is there anything I can do for you?" And the guy says, "Yep." He says, "I'm afraid I'm going to have to trouble you again." Now, the point to that is that even though you have done well and you're doing well, I'm down here to trouble you again, okay? I admire you, and I love you, and I respect you. But I have to trouble you again because what you are doing now is not what you can do. And I am very interested, for the sake of our new president, Tom Lamb, to see you and all the rest of us make October a super good month. And I'm here to urge all of you, regardless of how long you've been in the business, whether it is as long as I have or that you just started yesterday, to look up and step up to bigger and better things in the month of October. Therefore, today, my ambition and my goal is to say something to all of you that will make you think in a manner that might help you do better, or to give you a couple of ideas that you can use starting early in the morning. Hopefully, maybe to inspire you to do a better job for yourself as well as for Rainbow. Again, I heard an old Baptist minister in a little town called Sargo, Kentucky, a long time ago. And every Sunday when he got up in the pulpit, his pre-sermon prayer was, "Lord, fill my mouth with worthwhile stuff and nudge me when I've said enough." Okay. Now, there was a few times there when he didn't do too good on the last part of that, you understand? He got a little too long-winded, and I'll try not to do that today. But that is my prayer. I hope I can say something that will be worthwhile, and I hope that I, as I said, don't get too long-winded. The first thing I'd like to suggest to all of you, and if you want to make notes, you don't have to have a lot of detail, because if you just outline the salient points, you can remember the detail. We had a meeting last night that lasted about an hour and a half, and one young lady told me this morning that she made notes during the time that we were having that discussion, and she and her husband sat up till almost 2 o'clock this morning going over it, and they got quite excited. I want to tell you the honest to God truth, I didn't sleep worth a hoot last night because I got all cranked up too talking to all of you that were there, and I sat up till 3:30 this morning rehashing it all, do you understand? So sometimes when you get enthused yourself, it does you a lot of good. The first thing I want to suggest to all of you this morning is to get your yearning power up to your earning power. Now think about that for a minute. In Rainbow, miracles are possible. You can do almost anything in this business that you can conjure up the desire to do. Listen, when I started in this business a good many years ago, as I have said many times, with 2 kids and a gas stove and a mother-in-law as total assets, and wind up, as they say where I was raised, comfortably fixed. If I can do that, believe me, anybody can. All you have to do is to get your want-tos up there. Because another thing I learned is that what you want is much more important than what you need. My wife has taught me that. When she goes shopping, need doesn't have a blessed thing to do with it, okay? She satisfies her wants. And when she comes home, we don't discuss need, you know, because it is irrelevant, all right? And the point that I'm saying to you is that get your want-tos up high, because you can do whatever you want to do. Many years ago, there was a young fella, about 6 or 7 years old, that took his first ride on a steamboat on the Mississippi River. And he was some kind of overwhelmed with that steamboat. And when it pulled up to the dock and let the gangplank down and he walked off of it with his mother, he turned around and looked at the steamboat and he said to his mother, "Mama, someday I am going to be the greatest pilot on the Mississippi River." And he began to read and study about boats and navigation, and he did become the greatest pilot on the Mississippi River. When he was 30-some years old, he hung up the wheel of the boat and quit, and he started to write. And he became America's greatest humorist. His name was Mark Twain. That fella had a want-to at a very early age in his life, and it had a great influence on him. I read another story about an incident that happened in Greece many years ago, when the Greeks were very gone on health and endurance and all of that kind of stuff. Somebody had carved out a beautiful figure of a man who was almost perfect in his looks. And it was named the Great Stone Face. And it's set on a square in a little town called Carpathia. And there was a little boy in that town who had been born with defects. He was disfigured. He was something akin in his face to the Hunchback of Notre Dame. He looked awful. And he used to go almost every day to the square in this little town and look at that face and wish that he could look like that. And after several years of that burning desire, one day he was standing looking at that, and a person in that town came and looked at him and said, "Behold, the Great Stone Face." That fella had wanted to do that so bad that he became, well, like that Great Stone Face and looked like it. The point that I'm making to you is this, that my experience is that there is something at work in this world which I do not know how to define. I sometimes don't even understand it. But there's something at work in this world that assumes what you want is right for you, and it helps you get it. And I've had that happen to me many times. I also read a story once about a fellow from this part of the country, North Carolina guy, who started out here many years ago with an acre of ground and a borrowed mule. And he became a multimillionaire. Soon he owned thousands of acres. And somebody once asked him, to what did he owe his success? And his simple definition was, early to bed, early to rise and late to bed. Work like hell and economize, okay? Late to bed, early to rise, work like hell and economize is the way it rhymes, okay? Now, all of you have in Rainbow an acre of ground. What I'm going to try to do today is to sell you that mule, because Rainbow is a mule that will pull an awful big load of wants if you can conjure them up for yourself. I heard a story about an old farmer in Mississippi who had a mule, and inadvertently it kicked his mother-in-law and she died. And they had a big funeral, and there were just hundreds of men that showed up at the funeral. And the preacher stood up in the pulpit, you know, and he said, I didn't have any idea that Sister Martha here had all these friends. And the old farmer told him later, said, listen, they didn't come here for the funeral, they came here to buy that mule. Now, the point that I'm trying to make to you is that I want to try to sell you a mule. And to convince you that the key to better earnings is this mule that I wish to sell. The subject, therefore, that I wish to elaborate on a little has to do with a unique asset that all of you and I possess. And wonderfully so, it is one that we all have in the exact same amount. I once heard that everyone is created equal, you know. I look at some of the guys in this room and myself in the mirror, I don't kind of buy that at all, you know. There's somewhere they left me out of a few things. But anyhow, what I'm talking to you about is an item where you and I are equal. It has another peculiarity in that it cannot be stored up. It is nothing you can save, like money. When it is gone forever, like old dog Trey, never to return again. And one thing I've learned is that you cannot get more of it regardless of the intensity of your pleas or your prayers. And I'm talking about, I'm sure you have already guessed, our time. An observation that I would make to you without trying to chastise you, and that is that many of you in this room are semi-retired. Now, you haven't made any announcement about it, you understand. You haven't stood up in Leon's meeting and says it's sure wonderful to be semi-retired, okay? Some of you don't even know that you're semi-retired, okay? But it is nevertheless a fact, and that's what I want to talk to you about. I want to try to get you out of retirement for a little while in order for you to gain the wants that you're after, which is the reason why we're all here. So point number one, if you want to make a note, that success and happiness is determined by fundamentally two things. The ability you have, what you know about what you're doing, and the way you apply that ability, the intensity which you apply it, the number of times that you apply it. Maximum application of your abilities requires good time management. And this is where we all are short of the mark. In other words, too many people in this world, as I said to some of the key people last night, go through life letting things happen instead of making things happen. And the basic difference between a person who is a good manager of their time is one who makes it happen, and those who are not let it happen. Okay. How many of housewives in this room, regarding your time, have ever said to yourself at 6 or 8 o'clock in the evening when Papa comes home, you say, what happened to the day? Well, you just left. Okay. Now let me tell you what happened to the day. You twittered it away all day long, dabbing here, dabbing there, dabbing something else, and it went down the tube. That's what happened to it. It was wasted fundamentally, more times than not. So the point is that regardless of whatever your occupation may be, how you use your time and to apply your ability is the difference between overwhelming success and mediocrity. I'm sure all of you have heard the story about the race between the rabbit and the turtle. And I think there's a whole lot to that old story. There's a good philosophy there. Remember that the rabbit would run a little while and rest. But the turtle was a very good manager of his time, okay? And he kept at it, and he was consistent in what he did, and he beat the rabbit. The rabbit was jerky. He didn't know what he was doing. He didn't know whether to get drunk or buy a pack of chewing gum. You see, he wasn't really on the ball. And he got beat. And that's true of a lot of us. Success is determined by your ability and the way you use your time to apply that ability, what that intensity is. Point number two, time is not unlimited. As a youngster, I was an avaricious reader, and I still am. Matter of fact, the only way I went to sleep this morning, I got up and dug up a magazine out of the wastepaper basket and read the daggone thing again. That was the only way I could get my mind off of what I was thinking about. But when I was a youngster, I saw a book in a library that was entitled 25,550 Days. I didn't have any idea what they were talking about. The title intrigued me, so I checked the book out. And I found out that it was a treatise on the value of time. And the 25,550 days in the title had to do with the biblical allotment of 70 years and 10. If you take 70 years times 365 days, you get 25,550. The point of this book was how important those days were. And one admonition it made was that if you are now 30 years old, you only got 14,600 left. That kind of shook me up, to be honest with you. And it caught my imagination. If you're 40, you only got 9,000 or 10,950. Now, I don't want to talk about what you got left if you're 66, because that really discourages me, you know. But the point of this is that when you wake up here in the morning, if you're going to be here, there is going to be one less day than there was when you got up this morning or when you went to bed last night. Now, that's not a pleasant thought, to be sure. But when you and I contemplate the alternative of those days going by, it's not a very good choice either, you understand, you know, to put a stop to them. We don't want to keep them from passing, you know. The point that I'm trying to make is that birthdays are not to be avoided. You know, you want to have as many of those as you can. But the point is that they go by fast, and you shouldn't waste them. The really important thing in business and in life is to see that few, if any, of your days get away from you. Like money, it is no disgrace to spend time on something worthwhile. Vacations, nothing wrong with that. Days off, go play golf, have fun. Any of those kinds of things are very worthwhile investment of time. Helping other people, good investment. But how you use your time will determine to a very large degree your financial and mental and spiritual growth. That is something I've learned about all these many years. Now let me ask this question. If everybody in the room here went home and you found out that you had an underground leak, electrical leak in your backyard where the power came in, okay, after it got to your meter box, and you went out there and looked at it and that thing was spinning like a top, okay, and you knew that there was a leak out there somewhere in the yard, maybe to your lights or whatever, and the cost was about $400 a month over and above what your normal electrical bill was, or $1,000 a month, okay? What would you want to do about that? Would you want to find out where the leak is and stop it? And the answer is that all of us would do so without delay. Not too long ago, Margaret and her mother and my daughter go to Florida in the wintertime where we have a little home. And I was paying the bills while Margaret was gone. And I get an electrical bill for $700. I can't believe that. I thought the electrical bill was $50 or $60 or $70 a month. You know, that's how long ago it was before I paid one, you see. And I had the electrical company come out and meet me to find out what it was that was causing all this trouble, okay? You know what happened? In my house and in my yard, they found 124 light bulbs screwed into the power, okay? There were 3 hot water heaters, one upstairs, one downstairs, and one for the maid's quarters, okay? And during the wintertime, the only one that was used was mine because the maid slept upstairs, okay, because she was afraid, all right? So what did I do? Also, she's such a coward that she leaves lights on all night long. So what I did is I went around and unscrewed half of those light bulbs. Do you know she never did know? She thought they were burnt out, and she didn't know how to fix it, okay? In addition to that, I turned off 2 hot water heaters, and I cut my electrical bill from about $700 to $250. Now that was a smart move to stop that waste that was going nowhere. It wasn't doing anything for anybody, okay? And so I'm saying to you, if you had that problem of a total waste in electricity, you would do something about it quick, okay? Now let me tell you some bad news here. You have an underground leak in your own situation. You are wasting $400, $500, $600, $1,000 a month because you're wasting anywhere from 20 to 50% of your time. Or you don't invest it wisely, whatever definition, you want to use. To waste is to spend it unwisely. And I think that is stupid, frankly. Near to where I live, on Telegraph Road, is a mental institution called Pontiac State, where the schizos and the people, you know, that not real sure who they are or anything, you know, are in there. They got a great big old fence around it because the people get out and walk the yards. One day a guy had a blowout in front of Pontiac State, and he was changing the tire. He put all the lug bolts in a hubcap, inadvertently kicked the hubcap over, and the lug bolts went in the sewer. He's walking around scratching his head, didn't know what to do, and one of these dudes standing on the fence says, why don't you take one lug bolt off the other three wheels, and you can put it on that one until you get somewhere where you can get them, okay? And the guy turned and looked at him, you know, and he says, he said, I thought, and this guy says, yeah, he says, you're right, we're crazy, okay, but we ain't stupid, you know. Now, the point is that it is crazy to tolerate wanton waste of your time, and all of you are doing that. Your money is going down the toilet in the form of the value of your time. Certainly, if we walked out in front of the hotel and there was some dude sitting out there with a glass of beer in his hand and was building a bonfire out of $20 bills, we wouldn't say he was stupid, we'd say he was nuts. I mean, it wouldn't just be stupid, that wouldn't be enough of a definition, he'd be crazy, right? And that's what I think and have learned about the wasting of time. All of us are burning money every cotton picking day in the form of waste of time, which has a value. Point number 4, time does have a value. The first 10 months I was in Rainbow, I averaged somewhere between 12 and 16 sales a month. Not too long after I was in it, about the end of the first year, a friend of mine invited me to go to the University of Cincinnati, which was about 150 or 60 miles from Owensboro, to listen to a lecture that was put on by an economics professor at that university regarding the value of salespeople's time. This man had spent about 2 or 3 years interviewing and researching how much is a salesperson's time worth for each hour they spent face-to-face that somebody could buy. And he got up and talked about all the research that he did, the many different kinds of salespeople that he analyzed, and the bottom line was that every salesperson in the United States, on average, was paid $20 for every hour that he or she spent face-to-face with somebody who could buy their goods. Now, you got to remember that that was in 1946, when $20 would be equivalent to about $100 today. So let's say in today's money it was $100 an hour that the average salesperson's time was worth, okay? Now, frankly, I went up there with this boy because he offered to pay my expenses if I'd go with him. And you know how a salesman is. Well, they'll go to hell if somebody will pay the bill, right, if you'll pay their expenses. So I'm sitting in that room wishing the professor would drop dead. I want to get out on the town on this guy's money, right? And when he talked about that $20 an hour, it hit me right in the head. Because at that time, I was working for $30 commission a sale. It took me an hour and a half to get in the home, put on the demonstration, show them how to use it, and get out. We didn't have power nozzles or aquamates or anything else back in those days, okay? And $20, I made 30 in an hour and a half, so what, I'm sitting there, man, that guy's talking about me, okay? And I sat in that room and made a high and holy resolve to get back home and do something about it, because I took a pencil paper and I said, if I work 8 hours a day at 30 bucks, I mean at $20 an hour, see, hour and a half, you follow that? I made 30, and it took me an hour and a half to get it, so I was making the same 20. 8 hours times 20 is 160. You know, there's 365 days in a year. Now, if I work 340 of them, my God, I got a $60,000, $70,000 a year job, and I didn't even know it. Nobody had told me that Rexair was worth that kind of money, you know. And I knew a man by the name of Bondorf in my hometown that was a president of the Central Trust Company who was making $15,000 a year. I had a job here worth 5 times as much as the bank president. I thought he was something akin to Jesus Christ, you know. I sat in that audience and said to this old red-headed coot, when you get back to Owensboro, you're going to learn how to get 8 hours every cotton-picking day in front of somebody that can buy this machine. And I left there. I couldn't hardly wait to get home to get going with that because it really enthused me, okay? In your particular situation, let's say the commission may be 150, average, you know, after you're here for a while. You have a $200,000 a year job right now if you're selling Rainbow, if you want to work at it 8 hours a day. The same as I had one worth the other. Now, the thing that I learned, however, when I got back home, like everything else in life, it wasn't easy. It was a hellacious struggle to learn how to become a good manager of time. And I didn't do it with some wave of the magic wand overnight. Man, I worked at it a long time. I had some horrible, agonizing days because I started keeping track of what was going with my time, and I'd look at it when I got home at night. Now, I told Margaret, boy, I've been giving them hell today. But the truth of the matter was I blew the whole damn day. I hadn't done hardly anything. You know, I didn't want to admit it. So I had a lot of those kinds of agonizing days. I had setbacks. There were days when I couldn't get it going till noon. Appointments would foul up, and I'd drive halfway around the world to get there, and they treated me like I had a contagious disease on the front doorstep, you know, all of that kind of stuff. And it was hard to figure out how to do it. I had interruptions in what I was trying to do by the ton, and I had trouble getting it perfected. Okay, but I made headway, poco a poco, as they say in Spanish, little by little. What I did do in the next 10 months, I went from $18,000 to $34,000 in earnings. I didn't know how to demonstrate the machine any better. I didn't have a different batch of customers. What I was doing was creeping up on becoming a good manager of my time. Now let me tell you a fringe benefit that I got. I felt so much better physically and mentally. I mean, there is nothing, in my opinion, so exasperating as to go home and get in bed and know you didn't do a damn thing that day really worthwhile. That is horrible because it affects your self-respect. You don't admit it, you lie about it, you pretend you were sick or some other thing. You know, I don't know about you all, but sometimes when I get up in the morning, I don't feel very well. And I used to use that as an excuse, you know. If you had asked me my name about 8 o'clock in the morning, I'd have to look at my driver's license to find out what it was. But you have any idea how much work in this world is accomplished by people that don't feel good? Listen, every time you see somebody for the next 3 days, ask them how they feel. You're going to hear some of the damnedest stories you ever heard in your life, okay? And yet they're getting it done. Do you understand what I'm saying? It is no excuse, okay? Nothing, however, is so gratifying as to get a hold of yourself and manage yourself in such a manner that when you go home at night, you know you gave it both barrels. You feel good. Even if you didn't sell one, you feel good. Believe me, I know. I went through that. So if we can, let's agree that it is better to have a life filled with achievement, okay, than it is to let it slip through our fingers like so many grains of sand, okay? Now, point number 5. After many months of arduous effort and frustrations, here are some things that I learned. One is that big success comes when we minimize the wasting of time, using it in non-productive pursuits. Time, like money, is a commodity that is worth managing. It has a value, okay, like I said before. But I found out a fundamental principle here, which I pass along to you free of charge, okay? What is it? That the real trouble with time is it's free. Okay? Every day when you get up, somebody, the good Lord, has given you 24 hours, okay? And you don't have to pay nothing for it. And human nature is that if you get something for nothing, you don't place the same kind of value on it that you do if it costs. I tell my children all the time, you know, don't sit around waiting for me to kick the bucket, okay? But I don't want to ruin you. My will is going to have one line in it that says, J.V. Sanders, being of sound mind, spent all of his money before he died. Okay? Now, the point is that if you give it to them, they're not going to appreciate it sometimes, you see. And that is true of you and I. When time costs nothing, we don't really value it too highly, okay? What if every morning when you got up, like gas for your car, you had to go down to the corner and buy the time? And let's assume that it cost you a very meager amount of money, $20 an hour, when it's really worth 60 or 70 to you in this business. What would you do then? Would you waste it? As soon as you bought that time, would you go sit down somewhere on your fist and rear back on your thumb and do nothing for a half a day? Nope. You wouldn't want to have that kind of waste. And that's the way I started thinking. And it revolutionized my life. I never knew how to demonstrate any better. I wasn't a better salesman. I just got more exposure to somebody that could buy it by becoming a good manager of my time. My achievements started to multiply like mad. Okay? Now, 20 bucks an hour was what I burnt in my brain, was what it was worth. And I'd go somewhere and have a cup of coffee with somebody. Take 15 minutes. How much did the coffee cost? Back in those days, you could get a cup of coffee for a dime. But the real cost was $5, because I spent 15 minutes of an hour drinking that cup of coffee. Now, I don't know about you, but I like coffee, but at $5 a cup, no way am I going to spend that time drinking coffee. And I became that meticulous and conscious of the time value. Or I'd run into some dude that I went to high school with and sat on the curb, visited him with about the 2 girls that we used to chase all the time, you know, and that took another half hour, right? 10 bucks. Now, I like that guy a lot, but $10 worth, no way. I had to find a way to cut that out, okay. The point was that I learned to eliminate the waste and learned how to use the time because of its value, you see. And I eliminated the use of it for unnecessary pursuits. Now, if you want to have a rude awakening, you discipline yourself to the extent of where starting next week, you keep track of every cotton-picking thing you do all day long and just make little notes, okay? And when you get home at night, you're going to wish that you could kick the seat of the britches of that person, you know, that you know extremely well, because you waste so much of it. Waste adds up also. Little here, a little there, okay? I read a survey about the average worker in the United States waste conservatively 1 hour every blessed day doing nothing, okay? Now you multiply, say that's 1 hour a day and there's a 5-day week, that's 5 hours a week that is totally 100% wasted at the water cooler or somewhere else. You multiply those days times the year, and it's 260 hours a year that the average person wastes, which I think is maybe half truth. It's probably more like 2. Now, what does that add up to? 260 hours is 6.5 extra weeks a year. What could you do if a wand was waved and everybody else quit on December the 31st and you had 6 more weeks to go? You would be so cotton-picking far out in front of them, they wouldn't even be in the hunt as regards your ability to succeed. You follow what I'm saying? You get 6.5 weeks extra year and nobody else gets it. I guarantee you I can cover them up with accomplishment. I become president of the world. You know, you understand what I'm trying to say? 5 hours is 1/8 of 40. If the guy's earning or the girl is earning $400 a week and is wasting 5, how much money is going? 5, 1/8 of 40 is 50 bucks. What if you had a great big hole in your pocket, okay, or your purse, and $50 every week was leaking out? What would you do? I'd sew the damn thing up myself. I don't know what you would do, huh? I'd do something about that. That's plumb stupid. So the point is, we must stop the waste. You don't let your car run all night long. I mean, if the neighbor did that, never turned it off, you would call that guy with a long net, a big net on the end of a stick, and tell him to come down there and capture that rascal, right? Because this guy has blown his cookies. I don't even want to go out in the yard if a fellow like that lives next door to me, right? But yet, we are all guilty of it. I tell you, you keep track and admit the truth, and you'll find out what I'm talking about. All right, can I summarize then what I've said up to this point in time and get all of you to agree that time is a unique commodity, okay? It cannot be saved. Whatever you blow today, you don't get back tomorrow. And 2, time is limited. It's not only unique and you can't save it, but it has a limit. And also it is very valuable. And that if we had to buy it each day, we would spend it a little more judiciously, okay, and wisely. And that how we apply our abilities through better time management is the key to success and happiness and peace of mind, okay? Is that a reasonable summary of what we've talked about so far? Okay, Now we get to the guts of the whole thing here quickly. I want to repeat to you 7 tricks, okay? And I have to be careful about how I use that word trick because it has another connotation. But anyway, how I learned how to manage time and minimize waste. Okay, I'll give you those tricks real quick. Number 1, and this admonition to you is as old as Methuselah, okay? But it is just as fresh as the newspaper is this morning, okay? And that is, you have to take time to plan your time, okay? Which very few people do. If I were to ask everybody in this room to raise their hand who every day plans what they're going to do that day, we would have to have the minister here to take confession the rest of the afternoon, right? Because you'd all have to lie about it. You see, we don't do it. You got to plan what it is you want to do, when you're going to do it, and how you're going to do it. Okay, what, when, and how. And if you're in supervision, you got to find out who is going to help you do it too. It's what, when, and how, and if you got people working with you, it's who. Let me tell you another thing I found, and this is so simple, you know, that I hate to even tell you about it because you won't believe it. That planning just a little bit saves a bunch. Just a little bit of planning. If you take time to think and plan 1/2 hour to 1 hour a day, that is not a waste. That is a very astute, wise, sagacious investment of your time. I learned that if you invest 5% of your time, you get 150 to 200% more out of what's left. Do you understand what I'm saying? If you take 1 hour out of 8 and you spend it planning, you'll get 2 or 3 times as much out of the other 7 as you were getting before you made the plan. So the planning is wise to do, and it isn't waste. Never, ever, ever. I hear people, I talk to them about this, even some of the people that we've had on the staff, and they say, Sandy, how in the world do you have time to plan? Man, I get on a merry-go-round in the morning and I can't find any way to get off the rascal. Okay, that's BS. Never get too busy to plan. Stop. You know that song, Stop the World, I Want to Get Off? Well, do that once in a while. Just stop and go do it. Because you never have time, you've got to take time, okay, to do what is important. And what you do, the general planning that you do, is for the month. In other words, this month, I want to do this, and this is about how I'm going to do it and when I'm going to do it, you see. What, when, and how, okay. And then you do it by the week. You break it up into segments, and then you go by the day. And the trick to this is by the day, okay. Now let me tell you what happened to me that started me on a real good job of time management. I had a guy from a life and casualty company come to my house and sell me $2,000 worth of life insurance. And when he was in there, he had a card in his pocket that was about that wide and this long that fit in his pocket in here. And he took it out as he and I finished signing up the details. And I watched him. And I said, what the heck is that? He said, this is my route and collection card. Okay. Many years ago, when insurance people used to collect door to door, so to speak, they went to every house and collected the premium every month or every week or whatever it was. They had a route and collection card, and every day they'd fill out where they were going and what time they were going to be there and who they went to see and how much that person owed in a premium. Okay, and that's what he had in his pocket. And I looked at that thing planned for about every 15 minutes all day long. And I thought, my goodness, that's what I need. So I talked that guy to give me a handful of those things, and then I went to a printer and had them made up. And I have kept those route and collection cards. I call them my plan, daily plan. To this day, if you go home and go into my basement, you will find huge cartons, the old green storage boxes, and in those boxes are my cards from every day because I kept them. I went back and looked at them and learned a lot for that, and I kind of got attached to the damn things and never did throw them away. Maybe some of these days I'll have a fire and get rid of them. But anyway, the point is that that's what I used as my tool, and I started planning every day. Now here are the things that I learned. One of them is that I have to plan at night. I can't do it in the morning because in the morning I don't have all that much ambition. And furthermore, I'm a little confused yet, you know, as to what I really want to do. And if I got to go out and do something that's unpleasant, I can't do that right away. I got to go somewhere for an hour or two and sit down and think it over, okay? And that cost me $40, okay? Now, let me just give you quickly. What I did every day was I made a callback on somebody that had bought a rainbow, okay? Because I made 3 to 4 callbacks on everybody that bought. And I made those callbacks early in the morning for 2 reasons. One of them was that it didn't take very much mental gymnastics to go ask somebody how you doing, okay? Instead of trying to talk my way in the house. And I would, had a question I'd ask everybody when I went to see them. I'd say, did you get any dirt? Okay? Why, I was in Owensboro by myself. I didn't have sales meetings, so I had them with the customer every day. She said, any dirt, Sandy? My God! You know, I could have planted a garden in the living room. I didn't even realize I had all that dirt in here. I don't know how come we still got some in the yard. It's all in here, you see. And they'd crank me up like an 8-day clock. And of course, I got a lot of leads before I learned how to do owner referral and non-owner referral and things of that sort from people on the callback. So the first thing I did was a callback because it was easy, or it got me going. The next thing I did every day was I would register, because I found out if you don't prospect every day, pretty soon the well is dry and you're sitting there dying of thirst. And the time to prospect is when you don't really need it. If you wait till you're desperate, then it's bad. So I put down on that little route and collection card, you know, at 10 o'clock, go register. But in the process of all this planning, I found out that putting that down wasn't any good. And the reason is that I couldn't decide where to go the next day, you see. And so, you know, you could very well make a bad mistake and register in the wrong area. So what do? You got to drive all over town, right? And be sure you get the right area, you know. And that takes an hour. I used to drive up and down them streets at home, looking around at the neighborhoods, being sure I started in the right place. Cost $20 for that sightseeing tour I took, because it took me an hour to do it. Pretty soon I had to learn, don't do that, Sandy. Decide the night before where you're going. So I'd put down, register in the 1800 block on 9th Street. Because I knew that town like the back of my hand. I didn't have to go visiting, okay? But I found out that wasn't any good either. Because I'd go out, I'd look and it says register 1800 block and 9th Street, and I'd drive out there and I thought, well now, which side of the street should I start on here, right? And that was complicated. So I'd say, well, you better run down here and have a cup of coffee, because you don't want to make the horrible mistake of starting registering on the wrong side of the street, right? And that cost me another $5 to have the coffee. Now, what was the antidote for that? I put down start on the left-hand side of the street, right? Do you follow what I'm trying to say? I had to plan those things in infinite detail to stop me from having to worry about those decisions the next day when I didn't want to make them. I heard a story not too long ago about an old boy that was hitchhiking cross country. And he stopped and asked a farmer to give him something to eat. And the farmer said, Chief, this is not the Salvation Army. If you want something to eat, I'll give you something to do, and you can earn it, which I thought was a good idea. So he put the guy to hoeing tobacco. And he went out, and in about 40, 50 minutes, this guy had cut the weeds out of the whole tobacco patch out to the side of the house. So the farmer felt kind of bad that the guy was working so hard. He said, I'm going to give you something easy to do, and I'll go down and tell Grandma to fix you some dinner. He said, I got a bunch of potatoes here that's been sacked up, and they've gotten rotten. Some of them, you know how potatoes are, they'll do that. And they're 100-pound bags. He put about 300 or 400 pounds out in a big pile, and he set an old milking stool down. He said, now you can sit down and take it easy here. I want you to take all the good potatoes out of this pile and put them over here, all the rotten ones over there, and the ones you're not sure about, put them over there. And he went on down to the house to tell Grandma to fix the guy something to eat, and he came back, and the man was laying down beside that milking stool, passed out cold. And it scared the farmer. He thought the guy had a heart attack from pulling the tobacco, and he ran down the well and got a bucket of water and threw it in this guy's face. And he said, my goodness, man, he says, what happened to you? And the guy looked up and he says, Captain, he says, I don't mind hard work, but he says, making these decisions is killing me. You see? So the point is, you see, that you and I procrastinate because we force ourselves to make decisions at the last minute. And you can't do it that way. It doesn't work. You got to make them ahead of time. And I'll tell you, frankly, that I learned at night, I will obligate myself for all kinds of work tomorrow because I can lay around all night before I have to do it. See, I gave myself some time between the time that I got committed and the time I had to go at it. Now, if I get up in the morning and make that decision, I ain't going to start till 1 in the afternoon. And that's how the time got away from me. So you got to get really after the infinite details if you want to come up with a benefit. Okay. Now, the point here is, plan every day before you go to bed. Okay. And you can ask Margaret that I will be sometimes down in the family room at 11 o'clock at night with my pad out, And she'll come to the head of stairs and say, Sandy, what are you doing? Get up here to bed. And I said, Margaret, I'm making my plan for tomorrow. I cannot go to bed without doing that because it is a habit. The same as eating a cookie or anything else. I just don't feel good if I go to bed and I ain't got that done. And that has caused me to revolutionize my life and my income, learning how to do that daily planning. Okay. Now the tools that I needed were the following: calendar, monthly calendar, where I plug in all of my commitments and future appointments with that calendar. That was one thing. I had the daily sheet, which I call my daily plan, that I stole from the insurance man, and it had from 8:30 in the morning till 10:30 at night on it, and it was broken up into half-hour segments. Okay. Now that was 24 segments I had to fill in. You follow me? You want to have some fun? You sit down tonight and try to fill in 24 different things you're going to do tomorrow, or soak up them 24 half-hour segments. And you sit there for an hour trying to figure out, what in the hell am I going to do here? I've got 5 hours and I don't know what to do with it. You see what I mean? You begin to learn how much of it gets away from you. Okay. Pretty soon, though, you develop the habits of plugging in stuff that is important, eliminate the stuff that's not. Okay. Now, the reason I went to 10:30 at night was because I liked what I was doing, and I learned that you get paid for overtime in Rainbow, same as you do something else. And I like overtime because you get twice the money. Okay. And at 10:30 at night, I get paid twice as much as I do working at 9:30 in the morning. And you know, I don't have any aversion to making money. I don't think anything immoral or illegal or fattening about making money, you know, so I like to do it, all right? Now, I tell you, at the staff, we do the same thing. We have a daily list that goes around. We call it a to-do list. We developed it a long time ago. We have a whole list of things every day that we're supposed to get done and who's supposed to do it. And it's constantly being revised on a daily, almost on a daily basis. We get it done, we take it off, we add other projects to it, you see. And the net result of that is that we have fantastic achievement. The use of our time at the top of this company is really unbelievable at the work that we get done. And it's because that we work with those daily lists, the tools that I'm talking to you about. Secondly, I learned to budget time, to allocate it, as I told you before. I prospected every day, I made callbacks, I made service. I even allocated time for me to spend with my family. Wednesday nights, Monday nights, whatever it was that you wanted to do, take mama out to dinner, go somewhere with the kids. Those are wise investments of time. But you don't do it and you say, well, I never have time with my family. And that is the biggest cop-out that ever was. You've got all kinds of time. You're just letting it get away. That's what you're doing. The next thing I did is I learned how to control my time. I got the tools to do it. I budgeted it, and then I learned how to control it. What does the control mean? I didn't let somebody else tell me what to do. You see, I had my calendar and my clock in my program, and I didn't deviate from that sucker. Now, I hate to tell you this, but sometimes a customer would call me wanting service, and my time was already planned, and I'd stall them off. Now, I didn't abuse anybody, but if I didn't do that, the first thing you know, when I got up every day, somebody else had me whirling here and there and the other place. They were managing me. I wasn't doing it, so I put a stop to that. For example, right now, I'm going to fly, hopefully, if the good Lord's willing and the creek don't rise, I'm going to Tucson, Arizona today. If I can, when I get on that airplane, I'm going to set them myself. It is another time control tool that I use. Why? Because if I sit by somebody, 99 times out of 100, that dude is going to want to talk, you know. And you go through the same routine. You say hi, he says hi, or she does. And the next thing is, where are you from? And you tell them, and then you ask them where they're from, right? And then the next thing is, what kind of business are you in? And you tell them, and you ask them, what kind of business are they in, you know. And before you get through with all of those unimportant trivialities, 2 hours have gone by. Now, I don't make nearly as much money as I used to. I only get $10 an hour now, but I don't want to blow that $20. You see, talking to that dude who, you know, unless I can sell him one, now I might do that, you see. So what I do is I avoid situations where other people have a chance to control me. I don't want to be rude, right? So I get by myself, because what I will do is I've got a 2-hour plus ride to Dallas, and then from Dallas to Tucson, it's about another 2 hours or so, and I'm going to get 5 hours of work done today. And at $10 an hour, I'm looking forward to making $50 while everybody else is sitting there reading the newspaper or something. You understand what I mean? Because you have to get like that and think like that. you get a lot of work done, all right? Set deadlines is another key or trick. A goal without a deadline is like faith without any kind of work. It's a sounding brass and a tinkling cymbal. If you don't have a deadline set, forget it. You ain't going to do it, okay? It's so much hot air. You got to have a deadline. All right, I avoided waste of time in addition to managing by not letting myself get ticked off, angry at somebody. Have you ever gotten real mad at somebody that did something to you and you took a whole half a day cussing them out and planning all the nasty, dirty things you're going to do to them? How much did you make that half a day? Did it bug that person any? They didn't even know you were thinking it, you know. I used to go home with broken noses and everything else because of that temper, because I would take on Man Mountain Dean. You know, for a minute there, I thought I could whip it. Stupid stuff that you spend your time doing, non-productive. Remember this, the fly and the bee both stay busy, right? They're buzzing around all the time. The fly gets swatted and the bee makes honey. So what you do with your time is important. Just staying busy is not good enough, you see, because you can stay busy with a mad and you get nothing. Finally, the other trick was that I learned to work overtime to finish my daily work list. I am goal and target oriented now. So when I have a target list for the day, I don't want to go to bed till I get it done, because I get a charge out of scratching them things off. You know what I mean? It really pumps me up. Oh boy, another one. If you'd go upstairs and dig my checklist out today, you'll see a whole list of things. Some of them I got done last night when I couldn't sleep, and you'll see me scratch through them, and boy, that was fun, you know, to do that. It's a whole lot better than doing nothing. Do you understand what I'm saying? So, work overtime to get the list finished. Now, the point that I want to make to you is this. In learning all of those little tricks, and discipline myself for a little while to make myself do it until it got to be habit, and then I began to enjoy it. You see, it's like I was talking to you all about money last night. You know, if you got $60,000 in the bank that you've saved over a period of time, that is about as much fun as a banana pudding or you know, ice cream soda or something. I like those kind of things, okay? And the same thing is true when you get to be a good manager of your time. In a little over 17 months after I started this routine, I can go back and show you the records. My sales got up from 16 to 35 to 40 a month, personal sales, okay? You go back and look at the record. I had 17 months in a row where I sold over 40. I want to tell you something. I never had to go to the hospital from overwork, okay? I never did. As a matter of fact, I was so damn strong I could pick up the corner of the house. Do you know what it's like to sell 40 in 1 month? It makes you feel good. I mean, there ain't nothing that hurts you when you do that, right? There was a few months, if you go back and look at the records, that I sold 50 or 60. 1 month I sold 78. And everybody thinks that is a prevarication. It isn't. How did I do it? Was Sandy smart? Listen, I got out of school by the grace of God and the good nature of the teachers. As I've told some of you, I was so nervous when I graduated from 3rd grade I couldn't hardly shave. Now, the point is that, okay, I did it with a trick. And the trick was, how do I work 8 hours a day face-to-face so somebody can buy? Another way to do it, that's a little ridiculous, but how do you work 8 hours a day doing things that are constructive and worthwhile? And don't sit around and waste them. You know, be conscious of the value of time all the time. I increased my capacity to get things done beyond my wildest imagination. And I'm going to tell you something. This is egotistical, but I'm good at that. I'm really good, okay? And I see some guy's going to compete with me. I know he's the rabbit, and I'm the turtle. See, because I can outwork that dude. And not necessarily put in more hours. I just utilize the hours for something that's valuable. And when he wakes up in the morning, I'm gone. He's still sitting there trying to figure out what the hell day it is, you see, and I'm 9 miles down the road, okay? Doug Cunningham and Kent Walton and Jeff, all those guys are a lot younger than me. But they will tell you that I can outwork most of them. They come and say, how do you get so much done? And the answer is all the things I've been telling you. One is that you don't have to have a superior talent in Rainbow to be an overwhelming success, to make big money and rise to the top. If you learn how to be a good manager of time and apply your talent by doing that for 8 hours a day, you can be a big chief in this teepee, okay? I heard a story the other day about two guys that were in Yellowstone National Park camping out. And they heard a noise in the middle of the night, one of these guys did, and he got up and looked out the tent flap, and here was a huge grizzly bear out there ransacking the garbage, okay, and it scared him to death. And he went back in the tent and sat down on the cot and started putting on his jogging shoes. And his buddy woke up. And his buddy said, "What are you doing?" He said, "Man, there's the biggest grizzly bear you ever saw out there." And he says, "I'm getting out of here." And this other guy said to him, he said, "Man, that's stupid. You can't outrun that bear." He said, "I don't have to outrun that bear. All I got to outrun is you." You're going to let the bear eat his buddy, right? Now, the point here is, okay, that you don't have to outrun the bear in this business, okay? However good he may be. All you got to do is to outrun the clock and become a better manager of your time. Get out of retirement. You're too young. Some of you are only 25 or 30. You can't afford to retire yet. Even if you wanted to, you shouldn't. You're going to miss a lot of fun in life. Okay. You got the point here? I don't have to hit you in the head anymore if you'd understand what I'm trying to say. Okay. The amount of time you have is not unlimited. You got to spend it wisely. You can't waste it. It has a value, just the same as money every blessed day. You're either spending it or you're pouring it down the toilet, one of the two. And that's a wrong place to put it, okay? Politician goes in there, not money and not time, you know. And stop letting your possibilities go over the dam and mix with the waters of what could have been because you waste so much time. You know what? I'm headed to Tucson. We're going to have a pacesetter meeting. And I put together a speech that I'm going to make to the regional supervisors the first day we're there, admonishing them to be sure that they get a lot of benefit out of that meeting, and they try to get their distributors to do the same. And I put together the amount of time that we spent to have that meeting. There was like 30 some odd meetings in Detroit at the staff level. All of the tons and tons of paperwork and the secretarial time and everything that we send out, or every piece of paper we put together cost around $1 to $1.50, okay? With paper, postage, time, and all that kind of stuff, okay? We're going to have about 200 and some odd people out there, and their time, based upon their productivity, is worth somewhere in the neighborhood of $75 to $100 an hour. Because we got some big Indians in that crowd that make $50,000, $60,000 a month. I added up the value of all those hours that we're going to invest, the paperwork. It's going to cost $300,000 to check out of the damn hotel, okay? We're going to spend in the neighborhood of $600,000 to $700,000 in value. A whole lot of it is the value of the time of the people there. Wouldn't it be a shame to go away from that thing without getting something productive out of that money? And the answer is it would. And that's what I'm saying to you. You've got something that has fantastic value. Please invest it so you get a return on it. Don't throw it away, because you can do so much more in life if you would. If you had to buy it, or if time was like seeds, would you throw it out here on the concrete? No. You'd go put it in a field where it'd raise a crop. You know, that's what I'm trying to get you to do. My plea then, in closing, is to get you to make a firm decision right now to start managing the time that you have, by the day, by the week, and by the month. And if you made notes, find the tools to build an effective time management technique for yourself. And you don't have to be perfect at it. Just be better than you are. Because the difference between overwhelming success and mediocrity is only about that far. You understand? It ain't no big step. It's a little one. And if you do that, greater success and happiness will come, okay, to you. This old adage I ran across when I was 24 years old, and I carried it in my wallet for years. And I pass it along to you as my finale, okay? It says, take time to work, because work is the price of success. Take time to think, because it is a source of power. When you sit and think, you come up with ideas that make you more powerful. Take time to play, because that is the secret of youth. You wonder why Leon looks so young? That's the answer. I'm only kidding, Leon. Take time to read, okay? It is the foundation of wisdom. I read every blessed night, okay? I'm a dummy, but if you've read as much as I have, even a moron's going to learn a little something, you see. Take time to be friendly, because to be friendly is the road to happiness. Take time to dream, because when you do that, it hitches your soul to the stars. And you'll do things you've never done before. Like I said, you'll get those wants. Take time to love, because that is the highest joy of life. I tell you something about love. You can never, ever give it away, because it always comes back to you in bigger amounts than you gave away. The music of the soul. To have a sense of humor makes life much more pleasant. And take time to plan, because if you do that, you have all the rest of those things that I've been reiterating to you here. And if you do that, I tell you, based upon years of experience, that the rainbow bird of happiness and success will come and sit right on your shoulder. And you won't have any trouble. It's a pleasure to be here to see you. It's fun to be with you. And I'd like to do it again real soon. And don't forget that we want to ring a big bell for Uncle Tommy Lamb in October. Thank you. All right.